don't assume the things that exist today are going to be around in the future. That really the main key between people that are successful and those that aren't are the successful people are able to learn and have basically resigned themselves to understand you have to keep learning.
You're listening to the Legal Mastermind Podcast with your hosts Ryan Klein and Chase Williams, the go-to podcast for learning from the experts in the legal community about effective ways to grow and manage your law firm.
Today on the Legal Mastermind Podcast, we have Edward Olson. Edward started his career as in-house counsel for the only national securities firm in Detroit. He then moved into private practice as managing partner of two small law firms. In 2006, Edward opened the Olson Law Firm and continues to work there today. He's also taught classes on business law and ethics at Oakland University. We're excited to have you here today, Edward. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
All right. Well, I graduated from law school in 1985 and got my first job. I passed the bar that year and then got my first job as in-house counsel for a company at the time called Oldie Discount Corporation. They were the only national brokerage firm based in Detroit. Right off the bat, I was learning that there's a difference between, just advertising, hey, we do stuff, and then paying attention to what kinds of risks you're exposing yourself to. So when I went from in-house counsel there, I went to another in-house counsel position at Donald Douglas Capital Corporation. They were a leasing company primarily that worked for McDonnell Douglas Finance. There I got into a lot more of the management side. We were selling publicly traded limited partnerships, leasing programs, and just as in-house counsel or associate in-house counsel, able to really see a lot of what was going on from the boardroom, the folks from California to the local company. So when I went into private practice, which started in 1989, I joined a pretty large firm, but in their business department, it was a good fit because basically what I was doing was the same type of problem solving that I was doing as in-house counsel, but just now doing it for a lot of clients. But in practice, now that I'm, meeting a bunch of other attorneys, partners and associates and so forth, what I learned was that there's a difference between the practice of law and the business of law. And, practice of law is one thing where for each type of practice you're going to set up, you need to be proficient in the area that you're working in. But all firms need to know some basic things about money management and risk management. And there are a lot of very good attorneys who work great in the courtroom, but are not so good at balancing their checking account. So that's the thing that I think I would bring to the extent that you're asking, how you go about managing a firm, is that it's important to understand your business. And, I've represented many, many businesses over the years, from manufacturers and distributors and retailers and doctors' offices and all kinds of different businesses, restaurants and so forth. And what I've learned is that for each one, you need to understand the core. There's a core business concept that really makes or breaks every kind of business. And for each one, it's different. If you're a personal injury firm, you need a lot of money up front. You need a cash account somewhere because you're not going to get any money for a long time from the time you file a case until you finally settle it or whatever. In business, my goal as a business attorney is to be your in-house counsel for your small company from now until either you hire your own in-house counsel to replace me or until the company closes or sells or you retire or whatever. My business model is a more long-term approach. But for each attorney, you've got to figure out what are you doing, and how to structure your money, for one thing, in order to be able to afford the kind of services that you're going to be providing.
Thanks for going into that and kind of prefacing everything. The first thing I kind of want to talk about, since we're heading into the business point, and it seems that you're kind of driving this the most, is finances. So do you think from like a business standpoint that law firms oftentimes don't project financially properly more than other aspects such as like managing or HR?
I'm not sure that it's more than any other issue, but it is an issue that every firm has to face, yes. I've talked to a number of folks who they think their business is going to be like working for somebody, that they can set up a shop and then pay themselves a paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever. And, real life doesn't work that way. If you own the business, you get paid when you can afford to get paid. And, there's some ways that folks try to cheat the system. They'll take out a large line of credit, for example, and they'll be paying themselves wages out of the line of credit thinking, eventually I'm going to catch up with this thing. But, the fact of the matter is interest is a burden. And if the interest gets high enough, you'll kill any business. Borrowing money indefinitely will kill your business almost 100% of the time. So, borrowing money is something you want to pay attention to, not just because it would be nice to have a paycheck this week. As a business owner, especially in a new business, you sometimes go without pay for a while. And sometimes when things change in the economy or whatever, then you're going to go without pay again. So being an owner is not the same thing as being an employee.
Gotcha. Can you give me an example? So, you've worked in a lot of different structures and situations, from in-house counsel to associate, large firm, medium-sized partner. What do typical non-legal hires look like? The first non-lawyer or legal support hire typically look like at those different points?
In general, at a law firm, there's going to be, the owners, whether they're partners or whatever, there's going to be associates, whichever other attorneys you have to be licensed. And then from there down, there are paralegals, secretaries, sometimes clerks, and other type of support staff. But for each firm, their hiring needs are going to be different. For example, I had an attorney, a bankruptcy attorney, that rented space from me for a while. And in her business, she was the only attorney in the firm, and she had about 6 support staff. And they did everything from answering the phone, scheduling clients to come in, collecting information, filling out court paperwork. They basically did all of the work for filing bankruptcies, and the attorney really only had to show up at the hearings. She already had the information, and obviously she communicated with the people, during the process. But for businesses like that are very form intensive, you'll have a ratio that's very low of attorneys to staff. The same thing will happen oftentimes, for example, in probate types of practices or in immigration practices, things like that, where there's a lot of forms. You'll have many more support staff, and you'll have folks like paralegals who are doing, really important work. Sometimes they're doing the legal research. Sometimes they're doing the filling out forms, but they're not attorneys. A lot of times they might be aspiring to be an attorney someday, but so the type of folks that are, looking to get hired by a law firm are pretty much all dedicated to that one thing. I don't think there's a lot of variety of people that are really interested in other industries coming to knock on the door for a job.
Okay. What was your story like when you decided to start your own firm? How did that hiring process go, and just from what made you take that leap?
I first joined with some partners in 1996 to create my own firm, and a firm with partners. And at the time, I was not that many years out in private practice, and I did not have a huge group of clients of my own. And I was working with another attorney who said, "Ed, I love the work you do. I've got all these clients and I can't do the work. So why don't we go together and set up a firm?" So there was a symbiosis there, that I was looking for additional clients and he was looking for somebody to do the work. And that was the motivation to set up my first, firm on my own with partners. But over time, what I find at my firm and at pretty much every other one that I've talked to is that personalities make a huge difference when it comes to the owners. I think there's a thing called emotional maturity, which is something you'll probably hear more often when it comes to business in general, but with law practices as well, that you need to be able to be a business person, take criticism from others constructively. If your feelings are going to get hurt a lot when people say things about you, you might not want to be in management because, the truth is, whoever's the boss, they're going to talk about you. So, yeah, the personality's got I think, away from each other a little bit. And when I decided to go on my own, I thought, I don't need all of the drama. I was managing the firm anyway. So actually stepping off onto my own reduced the amount of time I needed to manage the firm by about a day a week. So it gave me back a lot of time to actually practice law. So by that time, 10 years had gone by, and I had a much larger group of clients who, were able to, I wasn't looking to anyone else to provide clients for me, so I went on my own. I think it helped too that I had I guess I'd call him a business partner, an accountant who, accountants are, for my practice as a business practice, knowing some accountants is a very important thing, because they deal with businesses all the time, doing their tax returns and stuff, looking at their financial records and noticing, hey, you need an attorney to look at this for you. So this accountant was my number one referral source. And I said, you know what, we should buy a building together. And so we did. And that's worked out really well. So now when he's talking to a client in the conference room and they run into a legal problem, he can knock on my door and say, hey, Ed, what do you think about this? So, the clients are happy to have that kind of service. They can get their accounting questions answered. They can get their legal questions answered. It's worked out really well. For my practice, I understand, these are business owners. This is what they're looking for, answers. And so it's worked out well for me.
That's great. So when he comes and knocks on your door and you go, hey, I have a question, you just hit your stopwatch and you kind of invoice him once a month or anything like that? Or you kind of like have a good relationship that goes beyond that? Well, and then I have just one more question, and then we'll probably proceed to some of the other parts, especially in the legal field. Do you think that it's very important, especially if people are going to be doing non-legal hires, to find someone with a pretty extensive background in legal? If they're a bookkeeper, their accountant, or their office manager, is it pretty important that they do have specifically legal experience?
No, I don't think that's necessary. If their function is not to provide legal advice, then I don't see why you would need to have a legal background.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if it's like, the environment, the law firms can be a very unique work environment, and personalities tend to, and then I think I'm trying to segue into kind of the like-minded individuals sort of, and maybe attitudes. But, some people might not be used to, law firms can typically be more fast-paced and more demanding than some other work environments. So maybe not necessarily it's their background having to do anything to do with legal, but used to working with lawyers and people that work in the law field.
I think what you'll find in law firms is the same thing that you'd find in restaurants or any other kind of business, that everyone is unique. You'll also find that the atmosphere, whether it's rushed, whether it's calm, whatever's going on, is almost always a reflection of the people in charge. Whether they intend to or not, the people in charge are setting the pace for everybody, which is why I always, I like I think it was President, the original Roosevelt, Teddy, that said the buck stops here. Maybe it was somebody else, but I like the buck stops here kind of a motto, because it's true. The people that run the firm, own the firm, they set the pace for everybody else that works for them. So if you find it's a really rushed and very difficult work environment, it's probably not the law firm, the fact that it's a law firm, it's just those owners. You can go work for somebody else.
Chase, I guess we work with a lot of aggressive lawyers. I guess that's our particular background.
On top of personnel, what's some technology that you utilize that helps you run your firm?
It's funny you talk about that, because I was thinking about that the other day. When I graduated from law school in 1985, none of the things that I use today actually existed. So, I use a smartphone to keep my calendar, and so the paper copy, because what I've noticed is no matter what you do with a paper copy, it doesn't automatically erase itself. So it's nice to have a backup. But you need applications to, calendar things. You need some sort of a billing system. And I eventually went to a cloud type of system. When I was in law school, they were just inventing Westlaw, and, they were giving law students free access to the computerized research, because they wanted to get everybody hooked. It's the same. It's the drug dealer mentality. I'll give you a few free ones, and then you'll be back. You'll be willing to pay for them.
I've never compared drugs to legal research, but I guess you found a way.
It's just a business model. They do the same. Most of the technology that I use is, computerized research services. Michigan is particularly nice, I think, because the state bar has an arrangement with a research company that provides top-notch research services without an extra fee. But there's lots of places you can go that are free, lots of libraries that are free. And then, of course, you still have Westlaw and LexisNexis services that you can pay for. I think you still need a good way to communicate with your customers. So you're going to have a good email program. I've got the email from my office going straight to my phone. So whether I'm in the office or not, I get that. I think it's important for your clients to be able to contact you. So my phone system that's here installed at the office is set up so that if you call my office and leave a message, I get an email with a recording, a copy of the phone message that you leave at the office. I can get that anywhere, anytime. So I think in different types of practices, different techniques are used. For example, I know criminal defense attorneys that don't want their clients to have their cell phone number, that sort of thing. But in my case, business owners, usually when I get a call, something happened. Somebody was fired or they quit or something went wrong. And even if they just need you to give them initial information about what to expect, they need to talk to you right away. So it's important that my clients are able to do that, whether it's directly through email or by sending me a phone message right away. So, all of the things that I use today are things that didn't exist in 1985. So, which leads me to another thing, which is don't assume the things that exist today are going to be around in the future. That really the main key between people that are successful and those that aren't are the successful people are able to learn and have basically resigned themselves to understand you have to keep learning because things, technology in particular, are changing. And if you're not willing to learn, you're going to fall behind. Every once in a while, I'll see an attorney, usually might be my age or older, and they don't have a smartphone or they don't have an email address. And I'm like, what are you doing? How do people contact you? I think it's a problem if you don't keep up.
Definitely. I know you mentioned briefly some of the most important business factors are things you really can't count. Can you talk a little bit about that as far as like inspiring your employees, leadership, listening to your staff and your customers?
Yes. There is a lot of training, I think, that people go through if they're going to business school or something that talks about, how to figure out how to count everything. And there is, I don't know if it's a psychological need or whatever. I'm not a psychologist, but I think there's comfort in some people saying, I've got it all worked out. Here's the number. Here's how many hours I worked, or here's how many dollars I billed, or here's how many, and they're counting these things and counting, and that's all they're doing is counting. And what you miss there is all the important things. I'll give you one example. I had a secretary years ago who was in at that time, a smaller office, probably 6 attorneys and I think 3 secretaries. And the deal was the secretaries were supposed to take turns answering the phone. But the one secretary who was assigned to me kept telling me, look, I hate answering phones. I just don't want to answer the phone. It was this, a very aggravating factor for her. She just hated being there. But when I gave her dictation, for example, back in the days when we gave dictation, she was fast. I mean, amazingly fast. She just wanted to sit at the computer and just type. That's all she wanted to do. So what we eventually did is allowed her to move into, at that firm, they had a typing pool where there was some 40 attorneys that could send tapes down to get typed up. Now, of course, everybody has a computer on their desk now. That wasn't the case then. But my point is that the reason there was irritation where she was at that spot was because it didn't fit what she wanted to do. So one of the key things I learned was it's important to find out what your people are good at. And instead of trying to, count things that everybody else are doing, well, you're not acting like this person. You're not doing the same thing the other person is doing. That's just irritating and aggravating. Instead, find out what they do best and focus on that. And I think employees, people in general appreciate that. If you appreciate them for the things that they do well, they're going to do better at their job.
When you were starting your firm, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Well, I remembered this years later. I worked for a partner at a big firm one time who told me, he says, Ed, every weekend I start thinking, what am I going to do this weekend? I don't have anything on my calendar for Monday. I'm not sure what I'm going to do when I come in. And it bothers me all weekend long. And then I come in on Monday and the phone rings and then it rings again. And by the end of the day on Monday, I can't figure out how I'm going to get everything done by Friday. So I think it's have faith. A business, especially the law business, is not something that happens like a production line, unless you have one of those like production line bankruptcy practices or something like that. But in law in particular, you're going to have fits and spurts. You're going to have, it's funny, a client will call me with a particular problem, like they're renting a commercial piece of property to a tenant they're having trouble with. And then within a week, I'll have another client with the same exact problem will call in. I don't know why they come together in groups, but they do. Just have faith that if you do the things you're supposed to do, there isn't any reason why you can't be successful. You just have to understand for each practice, who's your client? Who are you going after? What are they looking for? And you have to make sure that you're, keeping your risk in line with what you are agreeing to do. So,
thank you. That's a great piece of advice. What about any books? Are there any books you'd recommend to other lawyers that really helped you shape your practice?
I cannot say that I've actually read any entire books on managing a law practice. I've been to different seminars where the issue comes up. I've seen a few articles where people talk about law firm management. But most of the time what I find is that they're focusing on numbers again, accounting things. That we should demand so much, hours out of everybody and whatever. Those aren't as useful as I think understanding that what you're dealing with are not robots. These are people. And the better you understand people, the better your practice is going to be. And better by that, I mean less stress, less angst between people. And I think customers appreciate that as well.
Awesome.
So I think it's better for people.
I know that we're just, we appreciate your time. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Ryan, or Ed, is there anything that you wanted to leave everybody with?
I don't know that there's one thing. Again, I guess you'd call it a risk when you talk to somebody like an attorney. If you let me, I'll go a long, long time. So I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying to say, let's focus on just these things. In the same way that when a client comes in and they say, hey, this just happened, what should I do? They're not asking for the entire history of the law regarding that particular kind of, agency and principle or whatever. They just need the information to make sense out of their options right now. And that's what I try to do. I think people respond to that, and that's what I would recommend.
I have one parting question. Ed. Again, we appreciate your time. I know you mentioned that you're a teacher. It's obvious that you enjoy speaking about this and educating other lawyers on these topics. Do you have any sort of other places we can plug you if people want to hear you more? Do you have any other resources or other times you've spoken or videos? If people wanted to learn more about you or learn more about your take on the business aspect, if they can refer to those resources, and we can kind of put it on the page too, or associate with the podcast and the resources?
Not that I'm aware of. I've taught business and ethics courses at Oakland University and Oakland Community College and Macomb Community College, but I don't believe any of that's recorded. I don't know of any other recorded lessons.
We'll just have to see you at a speaking engagement sometime.
I'd look forward to that. I don't know if I gave you any of that information as well, but I'm also writing different things on the side for fun. I've got 2 children's books that I published and so forth. And so I do some, reading of those kinds of things that I think we can get up and learn. But,
well, everyone can stay tuned for that. It's coming out soon.
Awesome. Well, Edward, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for listening to the Legal Mastermind podcast. If you're interested in working with Ryan and Chase, please email mastermind@marketmymarket.com. Make sure to join the free mastermind group for growing and managing your firm at lawfirmmastermind.com. Ryan Klein and Chase Williams are the managing partners at Market My Market, one of the top legal marketing companies in the United States.